Hello YouTube, I'm Vigilant and welcome to another episode of the historic review of World War II ships. Today I will be talking about another legend of World War II, the American aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. The video was kindly provided by one of my clanmates, Georgi Topalov, so without further delay, let's get into it. USS Enterprise, or the Big E as they used to call her, was a Yorktown-class carrier built for the United States Navy during the 1930s. She was launched in 1936 and she was one of only 3 American carriers commissioned before World War II to survive the war. The other two were Saratoga and Ranger. She participated in more major actions of the war against Japan than any other United States ship. These actions included the attack on Pearl Harbor, Battle of Midway, the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, various other sea and air engagements during the Guadalcanal campaign, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, and the Battle of Leyte Gulf. USS Enterprise was 247 meters long. She was powered by 4 turbines which gave her a total of 120,000 shaft horsepower. This provided her with a top speed of 32.5 knots, which is the equivalent of 60 km per hour or 37 miles per hour. With her fuel tanks full, she had a range of about 12,000 nautical miles, which is the equivalent of 23,000 kilometers or 14,000 miles. The crew consisted of around 2,200 officers, pilots, and seamen. She was equipped with around 100 anti-aircraft guns of different caliber and could carry a maximum of 96 aircrafts. Enterprise was launched on 3rd of October 1936 and commissioned on 12th of May 1938. She was ordered to travel to Rio de Janeiro and then operate along the east coast and in the Caribbean Sea until April 1939, when she was ordered to duty in the Pacific. Enterprise was based first at San Diego and then at Pearl Harbor on the Hawaiian island of Oahu after President Roosevelt ordered the fleet to be forward-based. The carrier and her air group trained intensively and transported aircraft to American islands in the Pacific. Enterprise and the other ships of Task Force 8 departed Pearl Harbor on 28th of November 1941 to deliver some fighter planes to Wake Island. She was scheduled to return to Hawaii on 6th of December 1941, but fortunately was delayed by the weather, and she was about 400 kilometers west of Oahu at the dawn of 7th of December 1941 when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. As you know, the main target of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor were the aircraft carriers that were luckily all on training exercises and not in the military base at the time of the attack. Unaware of the attack on Pearl Harbor, Enterprise launched 18 of her airplanes at the dawn of 7th of December on scouting missions and then to land at Fort Island at Pearl Harbor after completing their search routes. As these aircraft arrived in pairs over Pearl Harbor, they were caught between attacking Japanese aircraft and defensive anti-aircraft fire from the ships and shore installations below. 7 of the planes were shot down either from enemy or friendly fire. Enterprise received radio messages from Pearl Harbor reporting that the base was under attack. She pulled into Pearl Harbor for fuel and supplies on the evening of 8th of December. Vice Admiral William Halsey, commander of Carrier Division 2, ordered every able-bodied man on board to help rearm and refuel Enterprise. This process normally took 24 hours to complete, but was completed this time within 7. She and the other ships of Task Force 8 sailed early in the morning to patrol against possible additional attacks on the Hawaiian Islands. On the 1st of February 1942, Enterprise's Task Force 8 raided the Marshall Islands controlled by the Japanese at the time, sinking 3 Japanese ships, damaging 8, and destroying numerous airplanes and ground facilities. Enterprise received only minor damage in the Japanese counterattack as the Task Force 8 retired to Pearl Harbor. One of the major battles Enterprise took part in was the Battle of Midway. That's a battle that continued for 4 days during the summer of 1942. On 28th of May, Enterprise departed Pearl Harbor with orders to hold Midway and inflict maximum damage on the enemy by strong attrition tactics. Enterprise was at the time in Task Force 16 with USS Hornet, 6 cruisers, 10 destroyers, and 4 oilers. On 30th of May 1942, Task Force 17 with Rear Admiral Frank Fletcher in USS Yorktown left Pearl Harbor with 2 cruisers and 6 destroyers and rendezvoused with Task Force 16 and Enterprise. The Battle of Midway began on the morning of 4th of June 1942 when 4 Japanese carriers, unaware of the presence of US naval forces, launched attacks on Midway Island. Shortly after the Japanese air raids, planes from the US carriers attacked next. Enterprise torpedo bombers attacked first, scoring no hits and suffering heavy losses. Soon after, Enterprise's dive bombers attacked and disabled the Japanese carriers Kaga and Takagi, leaving them ablaze, while Yorktown aircrafts also bombed the Japanese aircraft carrier Tsuryu, leaving her burning and dead in the water. Within an hour, the remaining Japanese carrier Hiroyu launched airstrikes that hit and crippled Yorktown with 3 bombs and 2 torpedoes. In late afternoon, a mixed squadron of Enterprise and Yorktown bombers flying from Enterprise disabled Hiroyu, leaving her burning. In the following day, Enterprise dive bombers alone sank cruiser Mikuma. In this major event, the US lost USS Yorktown, the destroyer Haman, and a total of 113 planes. Despite the losses to her aircraft squadrons, Enterprise came through undamaged and returned to Pearl Harbor on 30th of June 1942. After a month of rest and overhaul, Enterprise sailed on 15th of July 1942 for the South Pacific, where she joined Task Force 61 to support the amphibious landings in the Solomon Islands. For the next 2 weeks, the carrier and her planes guarded seaborne communication lines southwest of the Solomons. On 24th of August, a strong Japanese force was discovered 300 kilometers north of Guadalcanal, and Task Force 61 sent planes to the attack. This engagement would later be known as the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. In this battle, the light carrier Ryujo was sunk and the Japanese troops intended for Guadalcanal were forced back. Enterprise suffered most heavily of the American ships. 3 direct bomb hits and 4 near misses killed 74 seamen and inflicted serious damage on the carrier. Quick, hard work by damage control parties patched her up so that she was able to return to Hawaii under her own power. Repairs were done by 16th of October 1942, and shortly after that Enterprise sailed once more for the South Pacific, where with USS Hornet she formed Task Force 61. While on a scout mission, Enterprise scout planes located a Japanese carrier force and the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands was underway. Enterprise aircraft struck carriers and cruisers during the struggle, while the ship herself underwent intensive attack. Hit twice by bombs, Enterprise lost 44 men. Despite serious damage, she continued in action and took on board a large number of planes and crewmen from Hornet, which was unfortunately sunk. The loss of USS Hornet meant that Enterprise was now the only functioning US carrier in the Pacific theater. After the battle was over, Enterprise reached New Caledonia on 30th of October for repairs, and in the following months she took part in several engagements, including in the sinking of Hiei, the first Japanese battleship lost during the war. In the summer of 1943, with the new Essex-class and Independence-class carriers joining the American Pacific Fleet, Enterprise was temporarily relieved of duty and for a much-needed overhaul. On 19th of June 1944, Enterprise was one of the four carriers of Task Group 58 under the command of Rear Admiral John Reeves during the largest carrier aircraft battle in history, the Battle of Philippine Sea. For over 8 hours, airmen of the United States and the Imperial Japanese navies fought in the skies over Task Force 58 and the Marianas. Over the course of 2 days, a total of 6 American ships were damaged, 130 planes lost, and a total of 76 pilots and aircrew were killed. The American carrier aircrafts, with a major assist from the US submarines, sank 3 Japanese carriers, Iyo, Shokaku, and Taiho. They also destroyed 426 Japanese planes, losses from which Japanese naval aviation would never recover. Enterprise also took part in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which is considered to be the largest naval battle during World War II. Enterprise planes struck the enemy forces, battering battleships and destroyers before the action ended. The carrier remained on patrol east of Samar and Leyte until the end of October. She returned to Pearl Harbor on 6th of December 1944. During the last months of World War II, Enterprise took part in several naval operations, and while she supported the Okinawa operation, she was damaged on 11th of April 1945 by a kamikaze attack and was forced to withdraw for repairs. After the end of World War II, and with the commissioning of over 2 dozen larger and more advanced aircraft carriers by the end of 1945, Enterprise was deemed surplus for the post-war needs of America's Navy. She entered the New York Naval Shipyard on 18th of January 1946 for deactivation and was decommissioned on 17th of February 1947. In 1946, she had been scheduled to be handed over to the state of New York as a permanent memorial, but this plan was suspended in 1949. Subsequent attempts were made at preserving the ship as a museum or a memorial, but fundraising efforts failed to raise enough money to buy the vessel from the Navy. Enterprise was sold on 1st of July 1958 to the Lipset Corporation of New York City for scrapping. During her active service, her planes and guns had downed a total of 911 enemy planes, sank 71 ships, and damaged or destroyed 192 more. So this was the life and fate of USS Enterprise, one of the legends of World War II. If you like this little story and the video, hit that subscribe button, as I will be making many more videos based on in-game ships and the historical events they were involved in. Enjoy the rest of the battle, and I'll see you in my next video.
in 5 minutes.
Attention, reporting the target position.
Battleship sunk!
Fighter airborne.
Battleship sunk!